Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I wanted to do a video for you guys today on some of the wild medicinal plants that grow by me, and I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the ingredients and some of the things that I keep on hand to make different home remedies for different things. I want this video to be a little bit of a foundation for you guys to go out and do research on your own on some of these different things that I'm going to talk about. Give you guys what I know so you can use it for your benefit. I'm going to start this video out by including some clips from a little walk I did in the woods a few days back to show you some of these wild medicinal plants kind of in their natural environment so you know what they look like. When I'm done with that, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to show you the stuff I got laid out here on my bench that I kind of keep in my apothecary cabinet for making these different things, and I explained a few things for you. Just stick around, guys. Hey everybody, we're out here in the woods today. I'm going to take a little bit of a walk and see if I can't show you guys some different plants that grow here in the upper Great Lakes that can be used for medicinal purposes. So this is just a little bit of a nature hike here, and I'm going to show you a few things. And here's our first plant here along our hike. This is a wild violet. Wild violets grow in the forests and the woodlands here in Michigan. You can tell them by their beautiful purple flowers. And this guy right here is probably the most medicinal of all plants, and it's plantain, or plantain as they call it around here. This just has all kinds of different medical uses. It's kind of well known, and wanted to show it to you guys as well. Little stream running here. A lot of plants like growing in a little bit sheltered and wet areas. Something like this stream here is a good place to look for wild plants. Here's another wild plant that can be used for medical purposes. This is a jack in the pulpit. The top of him here has been chewed off. But this is a bit of a rare plant. You don't see these all over the place. So they're really kind of a neat find when you can find these. Here's another little guy right here. This is a wild strawberry, and he's blossoming. There's all kinds of them around here where I'm walking through. This is not only an herb that has medicinal uses, but it's also a source of food. And this is what it looks like here in the blossom stage. And here's another wild item that can be used for medical purposes. This is pine sap. This sap here is a little bit dry, but any of this amber colored liquid that's coming out of the pine tree, this resin can be used for different things. And here is another well-known medicinal plant. I've heard some people call it mullein, but around here everybody just calls it mullein. You can use both the leaves and the flowers of this plant for different things. This right here is milkweed pod. All the milkweed silk and seeds are out of this one right here, but when you find these definitely have uses as well. Here's another wild plant that's good for both medical uses and for food. This is a wild raspberry, and most of the wild raspberries around me are black raspberries. Give you an idea there what the cane looks like. These are actually quite hardy. I actually took a few of these out of the woods last season and transplanted these up in my yard. Hopefully I can propagate these in a few years and then have a raspberry patch right at my place. But I just wanted to show you what these guys look like as well. Here's another beneficial wild plant by me. These are sumac berries off the sumac tree. I actually did a video last fall on these guys. These guys can be made into a tea that's very, very high in vitamin C, and it's a fairly common plant here where we're at. Got all kinds of guys up the trail here. We got juniper trees, and we got pine trees. Junipers will have a berry on them. Takes a couple years for those berries to ripen, but they're a small purple bluish berry. They have different uses. And then of course pine trees. Pine needle tea is something that's quite popular when people are out hiking and camping. There's a lot of pines in here. Pine trees are a huge resource. Their sticks and needles can be used for tinder. You can find fat wood where you can find pine trees, but you can also use that pine wood to make pine tar, which is extremely medicinal. Here's a real good example of red willow. When people start talking about medical plants, sometimes bark is overlooked, and there are certain plants where their bark has definite medical value. Willow being one, birch is another one that has bark that's medicinal. I'm going to sit down for a second and take a little bit of a break. I want to mention a couple of things. It's Native American tradition when you're taking plants for medical uses, or you're taking animals after you're done hunting, to leave an offering of tobacco. And I've been taught these traditions, and I follow these traditions. And also want to mention something that's going to sound just a little bit metaphysical, I guess, but your intent makes a difference when you're out harvesting these plants to make medicine. If you come out here with the intent that you're going to make something to help people, that really does matter. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as well. Sometimes when you're out on these walks, you run across something like this, this large piece of granite here. Rocks like this were pushed down from Canada through glaciation. These rocks are not native to Michigan. They're the result of the ice ages, just like the Great Lakes themselves. Always neat to find something like this. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little walk here. Just showing you some of the wild plants here in my native Michigan that can be used for medical purposes. All right, guys, I wanted to talk to you guys about this stuff because I think it's extremely important to be able to make medicines and home remedies with stuff that you can find in your local area. If there is such a thing as a preparedness Jedi, I want everybody to be a preparedness Jedi. I mean, it's great if you can run a rifle, but it's also great if you know how to make medicine and help people out as well. And that's why I wanted to share this stuff with you guys. And I want to start out with just a little bit of a story. This is a story that was told me while I was very young by my grandparents. There was a old native gentleman that lived in our area, and I don't know what his Christian name is. Everybody in the stories they told me referred to him as Old Man Graverod, and Old Man Graverod was a bit of a medicine man. And there was a good working relationship between the town doctor in the time and Old Man Graverod. People would go to the doctor in town, and the doctor in town, he would look at them and try to figure out what was wrong with them. And he would come right out and say, hey, I can't treat this. I'm not sure how to go about this. You need to go see Old Man Graverod. So there was a good working relationship between these two individuals to provide medicine and medical help to the people in the town back in those days, long before antibiotics or any of the modern Western medicine, I guess we would call it today. So that's kind of the foundation that kind of got me interested in all this stuff years ago. So I'm going to touch base on a few things. I've already touched base on a few of these topics in some of my other videos, like my sumac berry video or my smudging video that I did. This is kind of what I have here is kind of a group of both home remedies, some Native American medicine and lore, that's included along with this. Some different things that I was taught to make when I was younger, and some of the stuff that I was told even just recently by some folks, older folks, different remedies that they used. And the first thing I want to start out with is I think everybody needs to know how to make soap, even at a basic level. When the panic buying started, soap was one of the first things to disappear. And of course, what do they tell you? Oh, well, if you're exposed to anything, the first thing you need to do is wash your hands. Well, if you have the ability to make soap even at a basic level, you're at a great advantage. Now, soap, in its most basic form, is just lye and fat in certain ratios to make soap. But soap is something that you just can't whip up and then go ahead and start using it. It takes a little bit of time to cure, so it's something that has to be made up in advance. Now, I got a couple of soaps here that I've made recently that are kind of in the curing stages. This is a pine tar soap that's just lye and lard and some other fats and a little bit of pine tar in it. And this is kind of a soap that you use for skin problems, and it's what it looks like here. It has a real kind of medicine-y type smell to it. And this is another soap that I made here recently as well. This is a charcoal tea tree oil soap. Basically the same ingredients. You got your fat and you got your lye, and then of course I added tea tree oil and homemade activated charcoal into this. And this is sort of a soap that's antibacterial because tea tree oil is antibacterial. And that gets to lye. Lye is an ingredient in soap, and it has to be respected because it is caustic. But lye is something you can also make homemade from hardwood ashes. You can leach hardwood ashes, and you can make your own lye. And containers of lye like this will make quite a bit of soap. That's why I keep a couple of these containers around. You don't need very much for a batch of soap, and you should always check your recipes. There's a bunch of different recipes for homemade soap out there, but it's not anything that you need to be afraid of to use. There's just some basic precautions, and you can make your own soap. Another thing, another two ingredients that I have here, kind of in my apothecary cabinet that I have, is both pine tar and activated charcoal. And along with lye that you can make yourself, you can also make your pine tar and your homemade charcoal, activated charcoal. This is my homemade activated charcoal that I made quite a while ago. Again, these things all take time to make, so it's stuff that you can't really whip up after something bad happens, but it's nice to have this stuff on hand so you can put together different remedies and stuff ahead of time. But homemade activated charcoal takes several days to make and to make right. Another thing is pine tar. Pine tar, again, you can make. This is actually purchased pine tar, but you can buy pine tar in farm stores in the equine section. And this pine tar right here didn't cost me very much. I believe I paid $14 for this, and a little bit of pine tar goes a long way. Like in the soap, you don't use very much of it at all, but it's an ingredient that goes in a bunch of different things, different salves and balms and soaps and stuff. So pine tar is something that's nice to have with you. The next thing I want to talk about is poultices. And what a poultice is it's either herbs that are pounded up to make a bit of a paste, or different herbs or vegetables that are simmered to make a kind of a concoction that you would use for different things. This is a poultice that I got made up right here. This is kind of a medicated one. And another thing is onions. An onion poultice is an old home remedy that people would make to clear chest congestion. You would cut up onions. This is an onion here that I grew from last year that I still had in cold storage. And onions is something that I grow a lot of because it's not only food, it also has medicinal purposes. But people would use onions to lower fevers and in the old days, and they would make these poultices of onion. What you do is you'd cut this onion up and you'd simmer it in water, and you'd strain that out, and you would put that on a cloth, fold that up, and you would lay that on somebody's chest to clear chest congestion. And like I said, it's a very old remedy. And all the stuff I'm talking about here, guys, I want you guys to go out and do your own research on and see if any of this stuff might be something that would help you out in a kind of a bad situation, grid down or an SHTF situation. Some of these home remedies might be something that might be available for you to make after the fact if there's no more pharmacies or anything like that. The next thing I want to talk about is tinctures. And what a tincture is It's herbs and different ingredients mixed in an alcohol solution to make a concentrate that can be taken different ways. It can be added into salves. It can be taken straight up in very, very small amounts because it's very, very concentrated. And you're going to need some kind of alcohol on hand to make that. I have some Stoli here. Stolenaya is a 80 proof vodka. That's kind of the starting point when you're making tinctures, is about an 80 proof vodka, or if you need something stronger, something like a Everclear. But again, all tinctures are very, very strong. You want to use them very, very sparingly. And I've got two here. This one here is a mullein juniper berry rhubarb one that I got kind of simmering. These also take about 2 to 4 weeks for these tinctures to come around. These ingredients have to steep in there for that long for them to reach their full potency. And this is another one that I have here. This one is a birch bark tincture. Again, this has to set about 30 days or so for it to reach its full potency. Another thing that I have here are sugars. Some home remedies taste terrible, so you have to add stuff to them to make different teas or syrups more palatable so people can take them. And I've got 3 different ones here. I got molasses, and I actually did a video, and I'll put links in the description for some of these kind of related videos as well. But this is a homemade molasses. Molasses is one sugar that gets added in some things. Maple syrup, also homemade, that I made, and honey. And honey should always be local to your area for it to be kind of the most effective. This is a raw honey here. I live in the Great Lakes, and this is a Great Lakes raw honey. Another thing is essential oils. Now, I'm not a huge essential oil guy, but there's a couple of them that are kind of important to have. And again, just like the tinctures, you don't need very much of it for it to be effective. I've got both tea tree and eucalyptus oil here. A lot of recipes where you would use this kind of stuff in, especially topically, you know, for soaps and whatnot. You only need a few drops of this stuff for an entire batch of soap or salve or whatever it is that you're making. You know, wild plants and stuff. This right here, these are my sumac berries that I harvested last fall. Plantain is another very important, probably the most common medical plant that grows in a lot of different places. Plantain just has a huge different, covers a huge different group of problems. And if I would recommend anybody look up one wild medicinal plant, plantain is the one to look up. Another thing is herbs. I grow a lot of herbs, and most herbs that you use in cooking also have medicinal purposes. Things like your rosemary, your thyme, your oregano, sage. All of these have a bunch of different purposes, and I have some of them all right here. Got some oregano, got sage, got thyme, like I said, and these are all very easy to grow. Again, here is a couple bundles of, did a video on how I dry this stuff, 2 bundles of rosemary and thyme here that I keep around for both cooking and for medicinal reasons. A couple other things that I got here is the tools of the trade, so to speak. You know, cotton twine to tie your herbs and plants up with. Very important to have something like that. Graders, have a small box grater so you can grade your ingredients up. Mortar and pestle, so you can you know, pound your stuff, make your poultices or whatever it is. Or like sometimes the homemade, you know, you buy homemade you make homemade activated charcoal. It's not as fine as what bought in homemade charcoal is, so you have to kind of pound that up to make that a little finer to add into different things. So mortar and pestle is extremely important, and an eyedropper. You know, like I said before, tinctures are very potent. You don't need very much, so you need a way to measure that. The next thing I got here is I got salves and balms, and salves and balms start as an infusion with different herbs and different medicinal items soaked in a high quality fat, usually an oil of some kind. I got a couple different ones here, you know, all non-GMO, of course. You know, there's sunflower oil is a good one. This right here is a canola oil that's a non-GMO. Sunflower oil is actually really good because it's high in vitamin E And then olive oil. Olive oil is probably the most common one that people use. So you need a little bit of that stuff put aside, specifically if you're going to make salves and balms. And the other thing is going to be some kind of wax. Now, this is beeswax right here. You don't need a lot of beeswax in a lot of these recipes. And what that does is that makes takes your oil infusion that you make and it turns it into a more of a paste that you can use, and it's not an oil anymore, so you can use that to rub on different ailments, chapped hands, whatever. You can also use paraffin. It's not ideal, but if you can't find beeswax, paraffin will work. And I'll give you an example here. This is a dandelion salve that I made a while back. Starting to dry out a little bit now, but it still works really well. I've been actually using this on my hands. Because all the hand washing's kind of tearing my skin up, whatever. But a dandelion salve is just what it sounds like. You take an oil and you take dandelion flowers and you make an infusion with that, and you add either wax or paraffin into it. Now this actually has paraffin into it. The thing, if you use paraffin compared to a beeswax is much smoother. Paraffin is a little bit more grainy, so there's a little bit of a grainy residue after you use this, but it will still work. And sometimes you can't find beeswax, and most Walmarts and stuff and a lot of different hardware stores and stuff carry, in the canning section, will carry the paraffin wax. But anyway, this is my dandelion wax here that I made. Got a couple other balms here. This is a birch. This is a birch salve made with the tincture of the birch bark that I showed you there just a little bit ago. And this here is a kind of an herbal salve that has the plantain in, of course, and some other herbs and spices, but not really spices. It's mostly herbs and plants that's in this. But plantain is being the main one. And then I got another one here. This one's got a bit of a reputation, and there's more recipes for this than there is stars in heaven. And that's a black salve. Black salve is kind of a drawing salve. Looks kind of like that right there. And a black drawing salve is used to draw infections out of wounds, or if you have a sliver or whatnot, and there's literally just tons of recipes and information on this stuff right here. And I wanted to show you that too. Like I said, black salve is kind of covers a whole different group of different ingredients, I guess, and stuff, but there's just tons of recipes for that kind of stuff. Just wanted to touch base on some of these things for you guys. Some of the stuff that I keep here that I can make different home remedies and stuff with. If bad things happen, like I said, the soap is the main one. Soap is something I think everybody should learn how to do on just a real basic level, and it takes time. A lot of the stuff takes time to get it right and to get the ingredients to the potency that they need to be. Soap is one thing that has to sit around because the lye and the fat chemical reaction takes time for that to take place. So lye soap is something that you don't want to just make it and then go ahead and use. That's got to sit for several weeks for that to cure. And the same thing with the tinctures. That stuff has to sit to draw out the beneficial properties of those herbs and different ingredients. But anyway, wanted to share this video with you guys. I hope you guys got a little information out of it, a little bit of entertainment. Like I said earlier, I want this to be a kind of a springboard, kind of a foundation, so you guys can say, hey, you know what, I can go out and I can look for some of these things myself, see if these things might be right for my situation, and just go from there. But do your research if you think this stuff might help you guys out. I just wanted to put it out there so everybody kind of knows what I know. I hope you enjoyed my little story there at the beginning as well. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys get a little information and a little entertainment out of my videos, and you guys have a great day.